The Talbot Hotel. More than just a Chicago Gold Coast hotel, the Talbot Hotel is a full-service boutique hotel offering the charm of a gracious bygone era coupled with all of today's modern conveniences.
Voss, artesian water from Norway. Splendidly still or luxuriously sparkling. Voss, artesian water from Norway.
I got to know Scobe through Alain Ducasse. Getting one for the first time and then cooking with it was a wow moment for me. What sets it apart, the construction and durability of it, the craftsmanship that goes into it, the history that goes into it. I mean, it goes back to Paul Bocuse. It's like the Mercedes-Benz of cookware for me almost.
Introducing Groupon's new bookable, time-based offers. Easily book a reservation at top restaurants right on the Groupon website. All we need is a date, time, and party size. Show up for your reservation time, no voucher required.
It's great to have you here. My name is Elysabeth Alfano, and I am the host of the dinner party. And what I do on the dinner party is I invite 3 celebs and a prominent chef who cooks for them and you. So over food and wine and performances, the unscripted conversations flow. Tonight, you're going to have, if you haven't already started, you're going to have bread, hearty bread from Nelcote. I swear they are the best in the city. You have 3 cheeses from Roth Cheese, Lagunitas beer, which already gets everybody in a good mood, Voss water, David's tea. You're going to have appetizers and entrees from the executive chef, Michelin star rated, 5-diamond award winning executive chef Ryan McCaskey of Acadia. He's in the house tonight. It's such a treat, really. It is such a treat to have him here. He's going to be making Schlegel Farm pork belly and Schlegel Farm beef, so just get ready to really have a wonderful dinner. And then save your appetite, because we have Lifeway kefir coming for dessert, and we also have wonderful Chicago pastry puffs from Chicago Cupcakes. So I hope you can save a little room. So that sounds great, but that's not enough, because at a real dinner party, it's not just that we're eating together, it's that we're also in conversation together. So there are 2 ways that you can join the conversation tonight. Everyone, look on your tables and you'll see index cards and Rivet Radio pens. So if you would like to throw us your questions for the people on stage, write down your question and your name and your email, and we need your name and email so that we can contact you. Because if your question is picked to be asked on stage, you're going to win great prizes. So you want us to be able to find you. So as soon as you write down your question on the index cards, raise your hand, and our interns running around the room will pick up your index cards and take them to my social media director, Allie Drum, right over here, and she will go through all the great questions and pick some. So that's one way. And then the other way that you can get on your questions to us on stage is to send us a tweet. So send me your tweets at DinnerPartyCHGO, hashtag the dinner party, DinnerPartyCHGO, and Allie will go through them all. And if your tweet is picked, you can win dinner for 2 at Acadia. Just saying, just saying. Dinner for 2 at Acadia, SimFest tickets, DVDs, original artwork, signed books, so much great stuff. Cookware from Staub. So you absolutely want to send us your tweets. Be in communication somehow, because that's what we do, is we connect on the dinner party over food. So we're looking forward to that. I would like to go ahead now and give everyone a minute so that they can get online and pull out their phone, and I'm going to thank my sponsors because I love them. So Groupon is up to great stuff. You no longer need a reservation. you no longer need to have a deal to make a reservation. You can just go right to their site, have a date, pick a restaurant, have a time, and you no longer need a deal. So it's very cool that they've got that reservation site up. Lagunitas Beer, as I said, they always bring the party to us at City Winery. I love working with them. Voss Artesian Water from Norway, I've worked with them longer than any other sponsor, and these people are wonderful for everything that they do. The way I work with them, their bottles are gorgeous, their water is fantastic. I just love having them in the house. And then Staub Cookware, you're going to see as we look at what the chef is doing in the kitchen, we couldn't do it all without Staub Cookware. They're absolutely fantastic. And then I have to thank a new sponsor that I have, Talbot Hotel, the elegant, old world luxury Talbot Hotel that has every modern convenience you could ever want in life. So welcome to the Talbot Hotel. I should also thank my media sponsors, Windy City Times. They do such great stuff in the city. And of course, the Chicago Sun-Times. Maybe you've noticed, but we are completely sold out tonight. It is a packed house. So if your friends could not get tickets, tell them to watch tonight on chicagosplash.com, the dinner party. And welcome to everyone who's watching us live on the Chicago Splash website. They are also tweeting in, so you have some competition. So you want to make sure you get your tweets in, and there is some great stuff for you to win. Okay, I would like to thank also Rivet Radio, my new media sponsor. If you don't know already what Rivet Radio is, it's so cool. You can go to rivetnewsradio.com, download the app, and no longer do you have to wait for radio to come at you from a little box. You can just download the app and curate your own radio shows. So you get news up to the minute and then radio coming the way you want it. So very, very cool. For those of you who were here early and you were partying with us on behalf of Common Threads, thank you for supporting Common Threads. They're a wonderful organization. I love what they do, teaching underserved Common Threads, teaching underserved kids about nutrition and cooking so that they can tackle obesity, as we know, which is such an enormous problem, as well as tackle just underserved neighborhoods in terms of the food that they get and the food that they think of eating. So I love Common Threads, and I love to work with them. And every dinner party, we try to work with a different charity. Okay. I think that's enough information for you all. Now let's get started on the dinner party. My first guest was named by the Chicago Tribune as Chicagoan of the Year for classical music in 2012. He was named by Chicago Magazine in 2013 as one of Chicago's major powerhouses in the classical music scene. He's the founder of the International Beethoven Project, which produces the Beethoven Festival and the Unfestival. And he's recently begun working with the Chicago Academy of Music in Hyde Park. Please welcome classical pianist George LePauw. Sir. You're right here. Actually, that's you. I think we have many fans of my next guest in the audience. To know her is to love her. She was married to a beloved Chicagoan, the Pulitzer Prize-winning film critic, Roger Ebert. She's a major focus of the film Life Itself that was a shortlist on the Academy Awards list. She is such a doer in her own right. She is the publicist of Ebert Digital. She is the president of the Ebert Company, and she's the vice president of Ebert Productions. Please welcome the wonderful Chaz Ebert. My next guest was named 2014 International Photographer of the Year. Again, to know him is to love him. He is a complete sweetheart, but he's also an acclaimed director. He's an award-winning photographer, and he has an incredible exhibition that has been taking Chicago and LA by storm. Malkovich, homage to the great masters. Please welcome the wonderful photographer, Sandro Miller. You are right there. Have a seat. Have a seat. If I didn't say that there is a lovely lady to my left. Rosemary Fanti, the fashion illustrator extraordinaire. What she's going to be doing tonight is sketching the whole evening live. And there's a reason why people hire her to catch their wedding and sketch it live, or as an anniversary gift, because Rosemary makes everybody look better when she sketches them. And you'll see what I mean by tonight. But this is one of the prizes that you can win if you send us your tweets. Whatever she creates tonight live, one of you is going to win and take home. So welcome to Rosemary. Love having her here, my stage left, and be sure to send us those tweets. I would also be remiss if I did not say that, of course, we have executive chef Ryan McCaskey slaving away for us in the kitchen. He's doing a fantastic job. In fact, let's see what he's doing right now for us in the kitchen.
Welcome to the dinner party. My name is Ryan McCaskey of Acadia Restaurant in the South Loop of Chicago. I've been open just over 3 years, and this is my homage to Maine and my summers spent there. We use a lot of product and ingredients that come from the area where I summered. So what we're gonna do today, I love pork belly with seafood elements. For whatever reason, little notes of shellfish or seafood go well with pork belly. So we have here our Sligo Farms pork belly that we have cured. And now what we're gonna do is just sear and render it off just briefly. While our pork belly is cooking, we have some wheatberry, farro, and barley. It's been cooked off in salted water, okay? This is a little bit of reduced pork stock that we're gonna just gently heat in there as well. We have our vegetable glaze with sugar, salt, and some little punch outs of kohlrabi. Once the liquid is almost cooked out and the pork belly is crispy and rendered, we're going to put everything in our stout pot with our grains, our stock, our pork belly, put the lid on it, and put it into an oven for just under 10 minutes. This will kind of infuse all the flavors together, also reduce the liquid, and just make sure that that pork belly is really nice and unctuous and cooked through all the way. So we're gonna pull our stout pot out of the oven with our pork belly inside. Our final plating will be taking our grains that we have inside. We have here our kohlrabi that's been in the vegetable glaze. Put one on top as a garnish. Here we have a smoked banana puree. This is just by taking bananas, smoking them whole with a little bit of olive oil and salt, pureeing it, adding a little citric acid so it won't color, a little touch of cream. This gives it a nice little depth and kind of tropical note almost to it. We garnish with a sea urchin sauce, which gives it that kind of nice nuance of the ocean and sea. It's a very clean flavor, not overpowering. It's not overly seafoody at all. It has just a very nice subtle ocean flavor to it. And then lastly, we will garnish with micro kohlrabi greens to kind of bring back the idea of the kohlrabi that's already in the dish. The more subtle notes of the ocean. The little lid will go back on top. Here's our finished dish. The pork belly, the uni, smoked banana puree, kohlrabi, and grains. A nice little delicate pot of nuances of the ocean and land.
Who's going to be joining us. Here he is.
Hello.
Wonderful chef. So good. So good. How many of you have been to Acadia? Woo! Okay, so you'll know, in my opinion, Acadia has one of the best bars in the city because you can get this kind of food and in a really relaxed bar atmosphere in front of the restaurant, as well as, of course, the proper dining experience in the back of the restaurant. So I'll just say that it's one of my very favorite bars in the city, so we should all go together. All of us, a group together.
Yeah, I think that's a cool thing about what we do at Acadia is we have that bar area for the neighborhood. There's lobster roll, there's an award-winning burger, things like that. But then the back of the restaurant with the dining room and the private dining room, we do have tasting menus and a la carte as well. So if you wanted to, celebrate a special occasion or something, you can go and splurge back there as well.
So, Chef, I have a question for you.
Sure.
You are a Michelin star restaurant 3 years in a row, and you have won the 5 Diamond Award 2 years in a row. And I'm wondering, what does having a Michelin star and a 5 Diamond Award do for your life as a chef?
It changes it pretty well, I think, for us. Because and honestly, first and foremost, it's nice personally because it kind of validates a lot of turmoil and a lot of work over the years coming up in the industry. This is my 25th year in the industry, and I've worked at 17 restaurants. And there have been some crazy times when I just sat back and said, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm working for these owners or whatever. Someday, that's kind of what kept, pushing on for me. So it's nice to have something like that kind of validate all of that hard work and blood, sweat, and tears. And then honestly, what it does for the restaurant is it just brings focus. I always say to people, it's not about the accolades. It's not like we chase them and are really hung up on them. But if it gives a little bit of awareness to what we do and brings people through the front door, at the end of the day, that's what it's about for me anyway.
Well, judging from the first tasting here, you've earned it. You've earned it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chef, thank you so much. So I know that you're very busy with entrees in the kitchen, but you're going to come back out and join us at the table when your work is completely done. We will see you later, Chef.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chef. So good. So good, everything that he does. I know. And he's such a joy to work with. So, Sandro Miller, Chaz Ebert, and George LePauw, thank you for joining me on the dinner party. What I try to do is I try to bring together people who don't know each other, because none of you have met before, and people who seemingly have nothing in common, and then I like to find the commonality that you all have.
I have to tell you one thing. We pulled a little trick on you.
Already?
We had a sleepover at my house last night.
Well, then you know what you have in common.
It was so much fun.
Well, what I found in my research, which was not as in-depth as your research last night, was that what you all have in common is that you all follow and are inspired by a muse. So you have worked with many people, but Malkovich you've worked with again and again and again. And of course, Chaz Ebert, you have been following in what Roger espoused for so many years, of course, decades now. And of course, you are inspired by Beethoven. So I'll start with Sandro specifically, but I'm hoping you can all jump in. I'm wondering, what quality is it that some people can affect so many? What quality do they have, specifically with John Malkovich, that his quirky style allows him to connect with so many?
Well, John's a great actor. You would normally think a photographer of my age might go get a, as a muse, probably go get a 25-year-old blonde with big breasts. But unfortunately, I chose John to be my muse.
His breasts are rather large.
He does have man breasts. We won't tell you that, okay?
We maybe have a picture of that, actually.
Oh, do we?
We maybe have a picture of John Malkovich and man breasts. We'll see.
So, with John I became friends with John about 17, 18 years ago. I started shooting for Steppenwolf Theater, and that's where we met, and I was doing some campaigns for them. John came into the studio one afternoon, and we did these really beautiful, rich, gutsy, raw black and whites of John. And John just really liked the way that, that I worked with him. I mean, it was a lot of respect, but I think he really loved the intensity that I put into my work, the passion that I put into my work. And the result of that was some really dynamic black and white portraits of him. And I think that kind of set the pace for me to have this long relationship with John. It was at that point, whenever he'd come into Chicago, somehow we would connect, and we would call each other up, and we'd do another round of photography. And what was so interesting about working with John, he was this beautiful white canvas, and he let me paint on him. He let me do what I asked him to do, and we have done some pretty strange things together. Photography-wise.
But he's such a normal person. How do you explain so?
Oh, yeah, so normal. But he's a brilliant man, and he's always been willing to go there. He doesn't walk in with a publicist that says, no, we can't do that. There's no way you could do that, John. He always walked in. He was very free. He's an artist himself, Yes. And he's a chameleon. He's somebody who I could ask to be Marilyn Monroe. He's somebody I could ask to be Saint Sebastian. Somebody I could ask to be Hemingway, Migrant Mother. And he could go there. So it was really interesting to work with what I call a genius.
Yes.
And yes, he has become my muse.
I love your work, your portraits of Malkovich. He is one of those characters who is so sort of complex and is eccentric and very artistic soul.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite movies is Being John Malkovich, and it took a character like John to make a movie like that. You know, some other people who I could see would put in that category would be Christopher Walken.
Sure.
Matthew McConaughey.
Maybe
Rob Lowe.
maybe Sean
A little
Penn.
bit. Sean Penn.
Maybe Sean
yes.
Penn. Yeah.
But Malkovich is the epitome of someone like that.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a great muse.
It's so
to
interesting
have.
that you say that because, you know, I kind of feel the same way. So many people have asked me, well, did you ever think of using somebody else for this project? And for me, it was just like, no, I couldn't even think about using anybody else, you know, because, you know, I would have loved to work with Sean Penn, you know, Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi. I would have loved to work with him.
Another one.
Yeah.
Very
And-
artistic soul as well.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
kind and generous too.
Yeah, I would have loved to work with him. But, you know, John, I kind of had a track record with him, and we had such a good vibe working with each other that I knew that John was going to, you know, I was asking for perfection. I mean, I couldn't get anything less than perfection. Otherwise, this could have been a debacle. You know, it could have been a really, really, really bad case of bad art. And so I needed somebody who was going to go there for me.
And he was so willing. For me, what's amazing is to see how acting can come alive in a photograph. So finally, we have some photographs from your exhibition behind you, and just to see how John really becomes these other characters, it's fantastic.
And what was really interesting about this, so John, what we'd go into hair and makeup. And John would be in that chair for about 90 minutes, and I would put the original photograph on the mirror. So while he's working with his hair and makeup, you could see John up there start twitching, start moving in that chair, depending who the character was, okay?
And he morphs into
He
the
starts
character.
morphing into that character.
Yeah.
And then he'd walk out into the set, and say it was Marilyn Monroe, okay? When he came out to Marilyn Monroe and Bert Stern, they were in the Beaumont Hotel in California when they shot that beautiful shoot with Marilyn. You know, it was 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
They were drinking martinis. There was definitely a sexual energy going on between the two of them. And, you know, I've had lunch with Bert, and Bert never told me, did they go there? But you kind of get the feeling something happened. But I could just see Bert asking Marilyn to remove her top. You know, and so I'm talking this through, and John, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You and Bert are there alone. You've been drinking martinis, and you're starting to feel something for each other. And Bert asks you to take your top off. And all of a sudden, John just goes like this here. And he turned into Marilyn Monroe, and everybody just went, oh my gosh. I mean, he felt like he was Marilyn Monroe for that moment. And it was really beautiful. I mean, so I'm really testing John to go to a place that's very difficult for a man. But by him seeing these photographs and then talking about the scenario, he was able to go there.
Yes.
And we did this for every single shot.
What seems amazing to me with him in general, in both his films as well as in your photographies, is that he can get into that character so deeply, but at the same time remain so much John Malkovich.
So much John Malkovich.
And so clearly,
Yeah.
with that voice, whether it's through his eyes or his expression.
Yeah.
But you can never mistake him for anybody else.
It's interesting you say that, George, because, you know, I didn't want to take John Malkovich out of John Malkovich. You know, I wanted it still to be John Malkovich. You know, I didn't want it to be Marilyn Monroe. I just wanted him to play that character and just see how far we could push him. And, you know, I worked with a genius. He was a brilliant man, and it was such an incredible, incredible honor to work with somebody like that.
Well, it's funny because part of what you're talking about is that partnership that you have, that mutual respect. Obviously, he's willing to work with you again and again.
Yeah.
And that makes me want to ask you, Chaz, about your partnership. You know, I think Roger touched so many lives, but that's us as the public. And I'm wondering, how were you touched by his life and death? And I ask specifically the question of you, because I think that might be different than what it was for the public.
Well, when I met Roger, the reason that I married him is because I saw a light there. I saw a light, and I think that we probably knew each other in past lifetimes, because our relationship in this lifetime is almost inexplicable. And we started a communication with each other from the very first day we met that hasn't ended even today, even though he's on the other side of the veil. So we still are in communication with each other. And that's how I know it's something timeless. And also, the thing about my husband is that he caused the molecules in my heart to rearrange. And so I knew that it was deep, I knew it was real, I knew it was something that was so beautiful. And, you know, he said I did the same thing for him. We had a lot of the same values. The word, if I used one word, it's good. He was good, and I like goodness, and he likes goodness. And I think one of the reasons that people loved his reviews so much is because you could tell the authenticity came through. And also, even if it was something that he didn't like, he was always going in expecting the movie to be good, or expecting to learn something, or expecting to see some redemption. In later years, he talked more about empathy, kindness, and compassion. Those are three things that mean so much to me. And I saw that in him, and he saw it in me. And it just, you know, we just sort of intertwined.
Well, I have a clip here. Because your life was so public and you lived your love affair so publicly, I will say, we have a really nice clip, a bunch of segments that's taken from life itself, I believe.
Oh.
The greatest day for Gene was when Roger came in to say that he was going to get married. I remember Gene saying to me, "Can you believe this is happening? He's gonna have a mortgage. He's gonna have to buy furniture. He's gonna have all the same things that we do to have to deal with. He's gonna need the show. He'll never leave now."
Chaz was probably more life-altering for him than his TV show. She really, really liked him for what he was and not who he was.
She changed his life immeasurably. She changed his personality. Hey, I was 8 months pregnant and Roger grabbed the cab in front of me in New York. It's not that kind of guy now. I think Gene was so happy that Roger found his mate.
He was 50 years old when we got married. He used to tell me, "I waited just about all my life to find you, and I'm glad I did, and I'm never gonna let you go." I mean,
It's wonderful. So I'm wondering, because I had asked the question, what did you learn from Roger's life and death? And what do you think everyone else took away from his life and death? Because I know you've gotten so many comments from people.
well, April 4th was the 2-year anniversary of his passing, and all last week we had the in memoriam section at rogerebert.com, our website. One day we had writers from the film critics who wrote about him. One day it was Ebert Club members. One day it was just people from the public. And all of the beautiful, beautiful comments that came in were very instructive to me. And most of them pointed to the thing about kindness and empathy. Although, don't get me wrong, my husband also wrote a book called I Hated, Hated, Hated This Movie, and Your Movie Sucks. So he was fully human. He was, I'm not trying to paint him as a god or anything. He was fully human, but the two things that I learned in going through this journey with him is, number one, forgiveness. He had a deep capacity to forgive, and I was one who held a grudge longer, but I am more willing to push a reset button and forgive people almost instantaneously now, because it frees you. He used to tell me, it takes a burden off of you that you don't need to carry, And it also frees the other person to be a better person than they thought they were. So forgiveness, I love. The other thing I learned in going on the journey with him is I have zero fear of death now, zero. And that's something that he, you know, when it was his time to go, he faced death, stared it squarely in the eye, said, I'm ready, I'm coming, and then he left on his own terms. Yes. So, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful, you know, the other thing is just trying to pass it on, but this is something we both always try to do. So we both like doing, you know, mentoring young people, and not just young people, emerging writers and filmmakers. And we just announced, the University of Illinois just announced the creation of the Roger Ebert Center in Champaign-Urbana.
Coming on the heels of Ebert Fest.
Yes, and next, well, April 15th is the start of Ebert Fest, our film festival, the Roger Ebert Film Festival that we started 17 years ago. And he, you know, he said, make sure you keep that film festival going. So we are.
Well, I'll tell you the thing that I learned from Roger is the power of change, because most people don't change very readily. They're very slow to change, and they might think that their life has changed because they've changed houses or they've changed jobs. But the actual true person is very slow to change, and Roger did some very difficult changing. So he used to drink and then did not. He has some incredible words to say about being a vegetarian. If you look online, you can find him on the PBS 11th Hour series. And then he did become more empathetic over the years. He was not always as empathetic as he was later on in life. So what I took away from Roger very much was the power of change. I have a tweet from Miss Chaz herself. Let's see what Allie Drum has for us.
Hi, this is from Lemmy581. He asks, what is your proudest accomplishment or moment in your career so far?
The proudest accomplishment, wow. I have to tell you, I hope that this doesn't disappoint you. My 2 children, I love being a mother. And I have a daughter, Sonia, who's in the audience, and a son, Jay, who lives in Florida. And I love being a mother, and I have 4 grandchildren, and that's one of my proudest.
Nothing compares. No,
Yeah.
I get that. Nothing compares. I'd like to say to the person who sent that tweet, we are getting you a signed DVD of Life Itself, and it's coming through the mail or some other way. But we're getting it
And
to
they
you.
can have their choice. They can have either the Blu-ray or the DVD.
Or the Blu-ray or the DVD. So check with Allie after the show, and you will get that. So go ahead.
I want to tell you one thing, though, that we know that you try to choose people who have something in common, and we were trying to figure out what we each had in common, and we thought but we were wrong, okay? French, or France. Monsieur LePauw is French. She's from France, from Paris, but also American. And Monsieur Sandro, his wife, is French, Haitian French.
Oh, I didn't know.
And I, every year, go to France to the Cannes Film Festival. And parlez-vous a little français, a little, un peu.
The rest of the show will be all in French from now on.
So we thought that was the connection.
No, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's an extra bonus connection.
Okay.
Another thing I got from Roger's life was being resilient and being perseverant. And so I wanted to ask George about being perseverant and resilient, because you are the founder of the International Beethoven Project, which produces the Beethoven Festival and the Unfestival, and it has had ups and downs, and it has taken the world by storm, and it has pulled back, and it has gone forward. And I wondered if you could tell me about what you've learned from this whole Beethoven Festival experience. Let me stop.
How much time do I have?
Who has been to the Beethoven Festival? Oh, good. Okay, so this section of the, and that section of the room. Great. Okay, so some people know about it, but just in case they don't, explain what it is for those.
Well, it's all Beethoven all the time. No, that didn't make anybody laugh. For those of you who have been, you should make your voices heard. No, the Beethoven Festival, as a festival, was always intended and designed to be a multidisciplinary festival, multi-genre, really celebrating not Beethoven, but Beethoven's spirit of creativity, personal courage, and social ideals. It sounds lofty, but really it's about the purpose of the artist in the world, in life. And as a musician and as someone who's been around many artists, both in my family and in my professional life, I find that artists don't realize the full power they have as individuals to change the world, because we always just wait for politicians to do so. And we're always, not to say anything about what's happening in Chicago tomorrow, but we always feel it doesn't matter who's in power. We are always disappointed in some way or another, even if the person in power has the best intentions. And it's part of the system. In any system, whether it's a democratic system or an authoritarian system, we're bound to be disappointed. And that's the nature of living as well. But artists have really this incredible power, which is not an obvious power. It's not something that you're sworn to do by a Supreme Court justice. It's something that we get to do by connecting to your hearts, if we have that talent. And by connecting to your hearts, it's not to manipulate your emotions, it's just to make you realize who you are and what you can do and the goodness that you can spread. So if we can be the impetus for that to happen in the people who follow our art, and if artists come together and understand their full potential, I always felt that we could really change the world without waiting for anybody else to do it. So that's what the Beethoven Festival was intended to do, and using Beethoven as a muse, because to me Beethoven represents these things. Beethoven is someone who, yes, we think of him as a composer of classical music from 200 years ago in Central Europe, but beyond that, he was someone who rose up from a very modest background, who may or may not have had mixed blood. Some people thought he might have been black or Spanish. We don't know, and it doesn't matter. What matters is that he was not associated with any one class. He decided to be a great artist, and he went for that, and he was welcomed, sometimes begrudgingly, at the court of the emperor in Vienna. He was welcomed in the tavern of the working class, and he was comfortable in all these environments, and he kept producing his great art despite his ailments. He became deaf, completely deaf in his 30s. He had many professional reversals, even though he was quite famous. He continued to produce some of the greatest musical work ever made by mankind while he was deaf. And he did so believing that mankind had something good to share with the world. And 3 years before he died, he published and premiered the Ode to Joy, which is all about human brotherhood. It doesn't matter if you're German or Austrian or French or American or from any other continent. He really believed that it was, in fact, he was so disappointed with the political systems, he thought, this is my chance to make it known that people can join together on their own terms. And so that's a big part of what it is. And lastly, creativity. And creativity is what drives us in the artistic process. Without it, we are nothing. And artists who are not who are fearful of being fully creative and taking risks that might land them in trouble are artists who are not using their full potential. It is our role as artists to take big risks and to risk falling on our face many times, which we do all the time. That's right.
Therein lies the perseverance.
Therein lies perseverance. And so, you know, the Beethoven Festival expressed that through taking huge risks, especially coming from the classical world, which is very traditional, blending that with high fashion, with film, with other genres of music, anything from, of course, classical and Baroque to hip-hop to jazz and electronic music, also video mapping and dance and theater, all these things, photography, you name it. The idea is not the art form, it's the creativity that is behind it. And the festival itself was designed creatively by artists, myself included, to reflect a new world possibility. Now, we had an incredible run for 3 years, you know, incredible press and reactions from the public on a very low budget. And unfortunately, in 2013, we ran even lower than we thought we would run. It's always a money game in the arts, and we fell short. And to a point where we couldn't sustain the festival in 2014, and there was a backlash. You were talking backstage about how smart people are on the internet. Wink, wink. There was a lot of negativity associated with what we did because we were not able to pay all the artists, which is ironic to some degree. Not because we didn't want to, but because we couldn't at that moment, although we've been coming back out of that hole and paying people as we can progressively. We're almost there. And there's always room for people to write checks, you know, so I'm saying that because I can't not say it would be a bad president if I didn't say it. You can always help support our project in the future, make sure that we can stick around. But what I've learned from that, finish on that, and I'm sure you have a lot more to say. What I've learned from the ups and downs is that perseverance absolutely is something that we as artists have to learn to do. You know, you can say you did something wrong. You can say it was bad luck. You can say all these things. But in the end, when I bring music together as I did tonight, and as you will hear a little bit more, and as I have for the Unfestival, which was our response to canceling the 2014 festival, when it comes down to it, it's really the opening of the hearts when we perform, when we share in very intimate settings, very honestly in rehearsals for you. And Beethoven, for me, is timeless for that reason, because he did that with his time and his people, and he's continuing to do so by inspiring people like me and others who care deeply about this. And at some other point, hopefully, I'll talk about his upcoming birthday in 2020. So that's another point.
I didn't know that Beethoven, that, you know, I used to call him Cousin Beethoven, and you said that he was... could have been black, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe.
Yeah. He was on the outskirts of society in a lot of different ways, and some people, in derogatory terms, referred to him as dark-skinned, and in those days, you had different reactions from people who looked different, and so we don't have.
And dark skin is very beautiful.
It's very beautiful, and so I think he was proud of who he was.
You bring
in Anyway, I actually have a question for George, and my question is this. I've always been obsessed with sounds and vibration and certain tones of music, and about how that is related to the birth of the universe, actually.
The Big Bang.
And
it's a sound event.
At Ebert Fest, we have one of the movies that we have on our closing day. We usually have a movie that's associated with music. And this time we're having a movie, we're closing with a movie called Seymour, An Introduction. It's about Seymour Bernstein, a classical pianist in New York, who he's in his 80s now, but at the age of 50, he sort of walked away from performing. And the movie tells you why. And this movie was done, it's a documentary by Ethan Hawke. And we're having Seymour at the film festival for closing, and he's going to do a master class on stage. Now, one of the things that I heard in the movie, and I heard this before, it's really fascinating. They said that on the NASA website, and it's there because I checked, that these astronomers from Cambridge found a cluster far, far away, a cluster of thousands and thousands of galaxies. And in this cluster, it's called the Perseus cluster. And in the middle of the Perseus cluster, there is a black hole. And in the black hole, there are sounds emanating from it. And there's a way to extrapolate the sounds from the black hole millions and millions of miles away. And when you do, and you put it through something, it's B flat. And in nature, Beethoven, Bach, several of the really famous composers did their major opuses in B flat. And they say that now there is something about the birth of the universe and the rhythm of the universe and B flat. So,
Primal sounds. Well, I'm not a scientist, but I do believe very strongly that a vibration, whether it's a light vibration or a sound vibration, affects us in ways that we actually don't fully understand. And I always wondered about Beethoven losing his hearing, because it's sort of the thing that, as a composer, like Roger losing his voice and still finding a way to have a voice, Beethoven losing his hearing and still finding a way to have an ear, fascinates me. There's something so primal about it that even without the physical ear, I think you can still hear. And he connected with vibration. He actually shaved off or cut off the legs of the piano in his apartment, laid it flat on the ground, and lied next to it so he could at least feel the vibrations through his body on the wood floor. But I always wondered, you know, at least symbolically, you know, even in the Bible, you know, and you know, the verb is so important, and the verb is sound, you know. And as you said, you know, I mean, I'll have to look on the NASA website. It sounds incredibly interesting.
You bring up a question in what you're saying, both of you actually, because all of you contribute to the cultural landscape of Chicago so much. And when you say, you know, Beethoven lying next to the piano so that he can feel it, or as an artist you feel compelled and you want to create, I'm wondering for all of you, do you create and do you perform for yourself or for others? I'll start with Sandro and we'll come around.
Well, I think for me, you know, when I'm performing for others, it's usually when I'm doing my, you know, the big advertising campaigns. That feels like I'm performing for somebody else. I'm working out somebody else's idea.
Their vision.
Their vision, yeah. And I'm a problem solver at that point. And I enjoy being a problem solver, and I enjoy, you know, for that creative director, art director to walk out of the studio and with a shot that he feels really good, that he knows he's going to go back and, you know, get patted on the back for and say, hey, great job, you did a wonderful job on this here. So that's the, you know, the problem solving. I mean, that's me working for others. But, you know, I've really, over the years, have used my, you know, the funds that I make in the advertising world, and I've done my personal projects, which I feel are the most important projects for me. You know, they're the projects that I really want to share with the world. You know, they are the projects that bring me all over the world shooting, you know, whether it's boxing or going to Cuba 14 times or doing dancers from all over the world, or doing, you know, or doing really charity work. You know, it allows me to do the charity work, which I feel responsible to do. You know, as a photographer, I feel responsible to create work for foundations and charities because I feel that my photographs can really help change the world, like you were saying, what art can do. And I feel that it's that single image that maybe might help somebody just go a little bit further into their pocket to help out a foundation. So I'm really big into that there.
And you have a book coming out this year, I believe, for...
I do.
Tell me this project.
Well, it was an interesting project. I was called by an art director from Leo Burnett who was working on a project. He had actually been going to St. Leonard's. And St. Leonard's is a halfway house in Chicago for people who have been incarcerated. And so while I was working with people, I mean, there was people who had been in prison from 2 to 40 years. So these prisoners come out and they have no home to go to. And St. Leonard's was taking these wonderful people in, teaching them how to get back into society, giving them a place to live, food, getting them jobs. But what was really important was this young man, Brandon Crockett. You know, he was a 21-year-old man, came to Chicago to work at Leo Burnett Advertising Agency. Instead of finding the first, you know, going into the Yellow Pages and finding what bar or what club to go to, he found what foundation he could work with, what charity. So for the last 7 years, Brandon has been going to St. Leonard's and teaching these people poetry. So here we've got these people who came out of prison, and now, for the first time, they're being able to put their words down on paper. And I'm telling you, some of these poems are so powerful and so strong, I can't tell you how many times a tear came to my eye as they read me these poems. You know, they would sit in front of my camera, they'd read me the poem, and just a couple feet from me were these people just reaching out to be heard. You know, and for the first time, their voice was being heard. And it just tore me up. So we're doing this book. It's portraits and poems, and it's going to help raise a lot of money for St. Leonard's, and we're really, really happy about it.
I've seen the book on Kickstarter. It's actually a beautiful book. And you can still go to Kickstarter, I think. And
no, we got funded. Yep, okay. We're good. So,
good,
yeah,
good,
thank
good,
you.
good.
Thank you.
And what about for you, Chaz, in creating what you're still doing with Ebert Digital? Is it something that you're doing for yourself and really continually for Roger, or do you do it for others?
Well, most of the things that I do, I do, and I want to make that clear. I wouldn't continue anything that I wasn't interested in continuing. And Roger would be the first one to say, "Don't do it for me." Legacy actually meant very little to him.
Really?
Yes, he was a very modest man, and I know, you know, in life itself, some people say, "Oh, he had this big ego." Yeah, he was, you know, but he was actually a very modest man, and he said, "Don't continue anything that you don't want to do." And so the things that I do, I publish RogerEbert.com, the website. We have, you know, great film critics who write for us. We also have Ebert Productions. We're going back into production, producing TV shows and movies. And we actually have a play that we will be working on. It may be a musical, but I'm not supposed to say too much about it right now. I'm actually writing a book myself, and I'm not supposed to say a lot about that either. You know, people are always afraid for me to say too much because, you know, one thing, I am the second youngest of 9 children. And so I came from a large family. I have 4 brothers and 4 sisters. And when you live in a large family like that, you make each other laugh all the time. And so in addition to being a serious student in school, I was also the class clown. And so I still have a little bit of that. Rogers, one of his pet names for me was Lucy, for like Lucille Ball. And so I can't help it. Sometimes so people are like, don't say that. You might say something wrong and people might take it seriously. But my background was, I was a trial attorney for many years. I started doing environmental litigation. I did civil rights litigation, and then I did business litigation, mergers and acquisitions, and intellectual property litigation. And then the last 25 years, I've actually been running the Ebert Company. And I started out as the vice president. Of course, I became the president when Roger passed away. So I am actually very busy, and the things that I do more philanthropy these days. That's what really turns me on. When I work with students, like I work with students at the Chicago Urban League or at Columbia College, the Links Journalism Program, and we get them to, they do some amazing things in writing and in figuring out the world around them, because that's what we try to get them to do. Think critically about what's happening in their own lives and then write about it. And then I have my editors edit their work, and then we publish it at RogerEbert.com so that other young people in the country can see their work. And we, you know, I've endowed the Ebert Fellowships at the Sundance Institute. Yeah. So we had 6 students the first year, 4 this year, to see what it's like to go to a film festival, and not just go to a film festival, but to see what the daily living is like and to be mentored by people in the business. Yeah. We do it at Telluride. Hawaii is starting the Roger Ebert Young Film Critics Program, and other places. But the thing that I tell all of the young people that I meet with is this: you don't have to make a commitment to do this, but what I'd like for you to do is observe the writing and the people that you see, and start isolating incidents of kindness or empathy, compassion. Those words are not just things that roll off my lips. They actually mean something to me, and I like for them to observe. And I ask, and how do you feel about things, about movies, about things that people do? That's what, and I'm hoping that we are creating a new generation of people who would prefer to do something, who tells stories about something, yes, and where empathy and kindness and compassion means something. And it doesn't mean that because like I said, I'm the class clown. It can still be something funny. It can be something fantastical. Engaging. I like magic realism, something engaging, but just something I don't like seeing people tearing each other down all the time. I'm really about bringing people together, so.
That's what we do on this dinner party, is we bring people together. So it's funny, because what you're saying is you really are creating for yourself because you have this vision, but you're hoping that people engage as well. George, would you agree?
Art is deeply personal. Yes. But there's certainly a difference between thinking and making art in your private space and doing it in a public space. So everybody here has a different relationship with the public and with themselves as artists and thinkers of the arts. I love performing. I love connecting. I love feeling the unspoken reaction from all of you. It's not the same. It's not the same every night. Even if you go to one hall and you go to another, you have a crowd and crowds clap, hopefully. But it's not the same energy every time. I'm sure I have a lot of filmmaker friends who are very nervous for their premieres because there's that live energy, which is you think it's just a film. To the audience, maybe it is, but to the filmmaker, they've spent a year, maybe 2 years, maybe more, developing a project. I'm sure for you and any exhibit that you prepare, it takes a long time to think through it. What do you do? How do you go through it? And I'd love to know how much time you went through with the last Malkovich show in terms of preparing and getting it done. But those are things that are really unique, and the private process is something nobody will ever fully comprehend because it's different for everybody, and that's just private sphere, and you can't replicate that. You can try to convey, but you can't replicate. But I try to connect my private feelings in public and be as bare as possible, as honest musically as a musician as possible with the audience, and not be into the dramatics for the dramatics, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. It does make sense, and we would love to have you perform on the dinner party. But of course, we've put our piano away, but that doesn't mean that we aren't going to have other performers on the dinner party. So they may be having dinner at the moment, but if it's possible, Consuela and are they here? Yes, they're here. And while they're getting ready, I'm going to ask a tweet for George. Ali, pretty quickly, what do we have for George? Because he has a tweet while they're getting ready.
Yeah, from Anya Rose D. Next to Beethoven, who is your favorite composer? And when did you become interested in classical music?
So first of all, Beethoven is maybe my favorite composer, maybe not, but that's really not the point. He's my inspiration. And I change very frequently in terms of my likes, like anybody. You change the dial, you get into a CD or something. In terms of the classical composers, I definitely love Bach. I mean, it's an endless source of sort of rejoicing and hope. We all need hope every day. So, if I can start the day with a little bit of Bach, even if I only have 5 minutes before I have to open my emails, that's great. So Bach is definitely at the top. But you named them all. They're all there's no mystery. Mozart, Chopin. I love Debussy, the French composers. Of course, I grew up in Paris. If you don't know Debussy very well, dig into it. It's something you should do lying down in the dark and really enjoying his orchestral works, his piano works. They're beautiful. Ravel is and then the Russian Stravinsky and all that. And of course, I love like anybody today. I love pop music and all sorts of weird things that I connect to. But I'm not as much a consumer as I'm a producer, and so I'm always sort of on the lookout. I go to a lot of live shows. I listen to a lot of things, but I don't just have music in the background so much. And I also like silence, which sounds funny, because I have so little of it.
I understand that fully. I like silence a lot as well.
And I think the second part of the question was simply when I started liking classical. Well, I'm a third-generation classical musician. My father and my grandfather and my sister are all musicians, and so I grew up with it. I was lucky. My father was in the Paris Symphony. He's here tonight somewhere. Over there. And so I went to rehearsals as a toddler, I think, in the basket, and then it was never not part of my life, and so I never even thought that there was any other kind of music. And this is what I try to do with the Beethoven Festival. It's music with a big M. For me, there's no classical, jazz, blues, hip hop. For me, it's music. It's expression. It's sound expression, and that's all that matters. I don't really care how we put store it on iTunes. I mean, it's music.
Well, speaking of music, let's bring Consuela back out. I believe that she is quite close.
Consuela is my sister, in case that wasn't clear.
Consuela, of course, your sister, Consuela LePauw. And Amaya, I believe, is also coming out. And Alejandro is here to give us a little more passion in our lives We need more passion from Alejandro. So we are not going to have George on the piano this time, but please tell us what we're going to see and hear.
Well, the steak is really good.
The steak is really good.
Sorry. The short of it is that we try different combinations, connecting, I don't like categorizations, but to simplify classical music with other genres of music, and that's why you heard earlier the mix of Beethoven and flamenco. And here you'll hear a mix of Ravel and flamenco. And so it's just wild, it's just fun, and it's connecting lots of different cultures. And it's changing perceptions and going for the unexpected. So I hope you enjoy it.
Y un pañuelo de lunares y con otro de fondo liso. Y un pañuelo de lunares con otro de fondo liso. Ay, 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 ay. Lay, 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 lay.
Fun show. Thank you for performing on the dinner party. Wonderful. We're going to take a quick break for our sponsors. I just want to say one thing really quickly. The person who tweeted in for George wins not only tickets to SimFest to see April 18th, Saturday.
In Hyde Park, yes.
In Hyde Park. What are they seeing?
Well, we have a variety of shows. It's mixing film and live music intersections. And the first film is about a classical music conductor who died recently called Claudio Baudo. Fantastic film about his last project. And the other film is Spears and Shields, I believe, about a musical project in Africa. So it's a really diverse thing, and we have some short films in the middle as well. And that's at our new headquarters in Hyde Park at the Chicago Academy of Music.
And that's on April 18th.
And I just want to say SimFest directors are here tonight, and SimFest is April 16th to the 19th. You can't miss it, simfest.org.
I was just stealing my thunder. That's what
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure.
And that lucky winner also wins cookware from Stowe. So lucky, so lucky. But let's take a quick word from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
The Talbot Hotel. More than just a Chicago Gold Coast hotel, the Talbot Hotel is a full-service boutique hotel offering the charm of a gracious bygone era coupled with all of today's modern conveniences.
Voss, artesian water from Norway. Splendidly still or luxuriously sparkling. Voss, artesian water from Norway.
I got to know Stobe through Alain Ducasse. Getting one for the first time and then cooking with it was a wow moment for me. What sets it apart, the construction and durability of it, the craftsmanship that goes into it, the history that goes into it. I mean, it goes back to Paul Bocuse. It's like the Mercedes-Benz of cookware for me almost.
Introducing Groupon's new bookable, time-based offers. Easily book a reservation at top restaurants right on the Groupon website. All we need is a date, time, and party size. Show up for your reservation time, no voucher required.
And we are back on the dinner party with Sandro Miller, Chaz Ebert, and George LePauw. I have a question for all of you. So I have lots of quotes from Roger Ebert tonight, but here's one that we talked about a little bit before, but I wanted to delve into a little bit fuller. Quoting Roger, "I believe empathy is the most essential quality of civilization. Art is the closest we come to understanding how a stranger really feels." I'll start with Sandro, but all of you can add to this. Sandro, do you agree? And do you feel that you're a conduit for helping people understand a stranger?
Well, I think so. You know, I think a portrait. I remember when I was 16 years old, and I opened up this book, and I saw a portrait that Irving Penn had did of Pablo Picasso. You know, at 16, I really didn't know who Pablo was. I really didn't know who Irving Penn was. And I remember flipping that page open in that magazine, seeing Pablo, and I seen this dramatic light, and I was so moved. I was so blown away. I mean, that instant changed my life. And it was, you know, it was that dramatic light, that rawness that Irving caught Picasso looking into the camera. He stole a secret. He stole a secret from Picasso, and he shared it with us. And I knew at that moment that that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted to take pictures of people. I wanted to take portraits, very strong portraits of people. And I wanted to have a little secret about them. You know, so I believe that me sharing these portraits with people, you know, what I want to do is I want to start a conversation with people when they take a look at a portrait of mine, is I want them to think a little bit deeper of where maybe that subject was at that moment that I shot them. What were they thinking about? And I'm always looking, you know, for me, you know, whether I'm shooting somebody who's never been in front of the camera before, which I shoot many, probably more than the celebrities I shoot with, or the celebrities I shoot with. For me, it's all about making somebody feel really safe and feeling very respected. And so when they walk into my studio, I make them feel extremely special, and I have a conversation with them, and I usually hold their hand or I touch them, because when you do something, when you hold somebody's hand or you touch them somewhere, all of a sudden there's a transformation of an energy that makes somebody feel like I'm with somebody who cares about me. At that point, they're going to give me something different. They're going to give me something special about them. And that's what I want to share with my viewer, is a special, special moment.
Chaz, do you feel the same, that you're a conduit for some of these special moments that maybe Roger had, or, you know, epiphanies that he had that you continue to translate for people?
If you haven't seen the 11th hour presentation, we actually have it on our website at rogerebert.com now, because it was, I think Roger filmed that particular one in 1994, and it resonates even stronger today than ever. And what it is it was an organization that said, what message would you give to the future generations? If this were your last day on Earth, or if this is at the 11th hour of civilization, what message would you want to give to the future? So the 11th hour, Roger talked about a lot of things. Empathy was one, and he talked about coming to empathy through art. And it's his talk, I think, is brilliant. I have another way of saying it, though. I think art is a very good way of coming. No matter how you describe art, as music, performing art, you know, the visual arts, the you know, auditory arts. I think another way you can come through empathy is just through curiosity about who someone else is, and through love. I think that one of the ways that I developed, just my curiosity about people. I love people. I just love people. I like to watch people. I like to observe people. I think that there's something interesting about every single person. And when my children were younger, and my son would say, oh, that person is boring, I said, no, you're boring because you're not curious enough to figure out what's interesting about that other person. And I said, if you spend a little time with anyone, you find out something about someone that just sort of blows you away. And it's not the same thing. It may not be to the same degree, but there's something that's so interesting about people. So just being curious about people just makes you, I think, creates an empathy. And I think part of that is because I really realized as an adult, I was so fortunate because I was so loved, so loved. My mother loved me so much, and she loved all of my brothers and sisters. There were 9 of us, and we each thought we were the favorite. We really did. And I don't know how she did that, because I have only 2, and, you know, it's hard sometimes. And some, you know, you show favoritism sometimes. And I think that when you know that you are that loved and that connected to other people and to the earth and to the sky and to the other worlds, the other dimensions, when you know that you are that connected, it just makes you love and empathize with other people. You don't kind of go through all these different portals of differentiation. Now, I can't say that there were times in my life that I, you know, was very much focused on other things because I was involved in the civil rights movement. And when I was a teenager, I marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he came to Chicago. And my father and I, we marched and we did things. And when I was in college, I was an activist. And so I was more focused on gaining civil rights that had been denied. And as I get older, I still want all of that, but it's more of a unified thing, like it's just us. It's just us. It's all of us. It's all of us.
All of us, yeah.
And so, so I think that art is a very good way to get through empathy, but so also curiosity and love.
What do you think, George? Do you see art as a conduit for empathy?
Absolutely not. No, I'm kidding. What's the point of art? Well, of course. I mean, empathy is all about exactly what to your point is. It's about how you're opening up to someone else, and what I find the most troubling is that we live in a world that is, in so many ways, so connected, and yet we're still so far away from each other. When I look at this city, and I'm not a native Chicagoan, but I look at this city, and this is true of many cities around the world, but there are so many divisions. And it's not just divisions of thinking, they're divisions, physical divisions. The city doesn't connect with each other in obvious ways, and it really needs to. And this is where I think the arts can play an active role. Like tonight, this is a fantastic way for people to come together, share a meal, have a nice drink, and get to know each other. But the more we do this, the more we can change the world, and just learn that there is no threat on the other side of the table. Everybody wants love. Everybody wants to share that feeling, and love is what empathy is all about. Sure. And so for me, doing, I consider myself a cultural activist as well, but as a designer of events, I don't want people to come to a show, and it's tricky because it's sort of designed that way, but I don't want people to come to a show and be passive observers of a show and then leave without having connected on a human level with the people they're sitting next to. Sure. And without understanding the fact that this is not about politics. This is just, you're sharing an emotional experience. You might have different opinions about it, but you're sharing an emotional experience. You have artists on stage performing for you, or you have a work of art being presented to you by an artist who put a lot of sweat, equity into it. And whether you realize it or not, it makes a big difference. I always say, if you go to a concert or to a show, and you have live performers, or you have the filmmaker in the room, don't just, if you can, sometimes you can't, but don't just walk off because you have to be the first one back to your car, even if you've paid for your ticket, even if it was a $500 box seat. Clap, because the artist doesn't care. They may not be getting all that $500. They may not get $5, but make sure you show your appreciation if you appreciate it. If you don't appreciate it, fine, you can walk out. But if you appreciate it, do the human thing and show that appreciation with a clap, a smile. Share that energy of appreciation before you leave, because the artist feels it on stage. We are not separate from that, and that's one of the things I've been trying to teach.
Our dancer, Alejandro. So much fun to party with the Spanish. I have a tweet from Ali, from someone in the audience, Ali, for Sandro.
It was actually a card question.
Ooh, a card question, great.
Yeah, it says from Pooja and Freddie, we believe a picture/photograph can capture 1,000 words. What do you believe is one thing a picture cannot capture or is difficult to capture?
So if a picture can capture 1,000 words, what is something that a picture cannot capture?
Wow, that's a difficult
If it's a
one.
Sandro picture.
It captures everything.
What can a photograph not capture? Not capture.
While you think about that, I'll say that this person has won a signed copy of your book coming out that you were talking about before about St. Leonard's.
I always look at, I'm always so positive about what an image really does do to the world. When I lecture or when I go to school and talk to kids, I'll tell them that photography is the big educator. I think most of us would not have any idea what war looks like. We don't have any idea what a tsunami looks like, or famine, or many of us have never faced AIDS firsthand. But through a photograph, we learn what all of this is. And so for me, photography has always been a major, major, major educator. And I feel like through photography, I've learned more through looking at pictures than I have learned anywhere else. But for something that it can't capture, for me, I look at some of the most horrific photographs that I've ever seen, and I feel the pain, I feel the sorrow, I feel the hardship, So it doesn't feel like there's anything that a photograph really can't capture. And I would love to know if somebody feels like there is something out there that a photograph can't capture.
Well, I will segue immediately into capturing the odd and bizarre world of John Malkovich. We do have a clip here of John Malkovich and Sandro working together. Sandro here as a director in this film clip about John Malkovich. In the evening when everyone's getting their sugar buzz on because we have these incredible pastry puffs, so good and sweet, from Chicago Cupcake. So I'm going to let everyone delve right into their desserts, and let's take a peek one last time into the kitchen and see what Chef was making, and then we're going to bring out Chef so we can join the party.
Welcome back to the dinner party. My name is Ryan McCaskey from Acadia Restaurant in the South Loop. For your entree, we are going to have Schlegel Farms tri-tip beef with a celery root gratin, leek ash, and oxtail prune consomme. What we'll do first, season our beef, salt, a couple twists of pepper. So now we're just going to sear it off in the stove griddle to medium rare. While our beef is cooking, we have a celery root gratin made with celery root, potato, and a little touch of cream. This is going to go in the oven for about 5 minutes. So now we're going to heat up our baby Tokyo turnips from Chef's Garden. It's going to be heated with a little water, butter, salt, and sugar. It's kind of a half emulsification. The next step would be to heat up our little tiny baby leeks in the same vegetable glaze. While that's slowly heating, we're gonna take our consomme made from oxtail and prune. This will be served on the side of the final beef dish. All right, beef is just about done. I'm gonna check on the celery root gratin. I don't want a lot of color on it. I just wanna make sure it is hot all the way through. So we're gonna rest the beef so the juices won't bleed out. Now we'll be plating our Schlegel Farms beef dish. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our seared off beef and just give it a little bit of dusting and a little bit of leek ash. Gives it a nice earthy, very vegetal flavor. And we're gonna slice our beef. Just get nice even cuts. Beautiful medium rare to medium. The next we'll put the vegetables on. We have our Tokyo turnips, baby leek. We also have a little bit of pickled garlic that we'll garnish the top with. A little acidic and intense punch to everything. We'll do a little slices of Perigord truffle, a little perfume, a little mushroom that goes well with the beef and everything else happening on the plate. We have some fried leek tops, garlic root. We have mock salad, which adds a nice punch of citrus. And finally, our oxtail and prune consomme. So we encourage the guests to sip the consomme as they're finishing the dish to kind of bring together that last beefy element. And that is the final dish. We have Schlegel Farms beef dusted in leek ash with celery root potato gratin, Tokyo turnip, baby leek, and finally the oxtail prune consomme. It's been a lot of fun cooking for everybody at the dinner party at City Winery. Please come down to the South Loop and visit me at Acadia, 1639 South Wabash.
So good, Chef. Thank you. Cheers to Chef. Cheers. Cheers to Chef. Thank you, Chef.
Hooray.
Thank you, Chef. So, Chef, I want to ask you, how exciting is it to have the James Beard Awards here in Chicago for their 25th anniversary, coming May 4th?
I'm really excited about it. I think that the coolest thing it does for us as a city of Chicago is it brings awareness to Chicago, but every year that's in New York, we spend all of this time going to these restaurants in New York, experiencing New York for a few days, doing the whole whirlwind tour that can be New York. But it's kind of nice now for them to do it with us.
It's fantastic.
So why don't you come and try all of our restaurants and do the whirlwind tour of Chicago? So I'm really excited about it.
I'm always amazed how many people haven't done that. How many people work in the culinary world and really haven't discovered Chicago as the culinary epicenter that it is.
Right, exactly. I think as I've traveled a lot in the last couple of years even, the number one thing I kept hearing was people saying, wow, we haven't been to Chicago in a long time, or we really need to go, we've been meaning to go, or we've heard about that restaurant or that restaurant. So now it's kind of like, what's the excuse? Let's go.
Yeah. And Chicago wasn't known as much as it is today for its incredible advanced culinary experiences. And thanks to you and a good number of chefs in Chicago, it's just changed radically in the last 20 years.
Yeah. Radically. Yeah. It very quickly, it has changed and put Chicago on the map internationally, I would say.
Right, correct.
And I sort of have to thank our mayor for that. I mean, he's been very active in that.
The last two, for sure.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, yes.
Both mayors, I think we've gotten lucky with. I know Mayor Daley used to actually eat at a lot of restaurants that I was working at over the years, and they're good foodies. I mean, they not only support the restaurant scene in Chicago, but just a lot of local chefs like me.
Yes. Well, I was surprised because he and I were on WGN Radio. As you guys, some of you who come to these shows often know that I often fill in on WGN Radio, and so I had Chef on with me the other day, and I was surprised to learn that Chef, in addition to cooking for 25 years, you have other thoughts of doing other things sometimes. Tell me what you might do if you weren't a chef.
How long is this show? I mean, I've written, I've been a writer before. I've actually written a screenplay for a movie.
About what?
You're in the right table.
So it's an interesting movie. It's psychological. It's basically a movie. It's kind of funny because I started the screenplay probably in the 90s, and since then there have been like 50 movies out like it now. Oh. But originally I thought I had the original idea.
You had to add the cell phones as well.
Exactly.
Was it like Big Night or?
No, it was basically a movie, kind of autobiographical, about me, and it came from my point of view, and it was just a crazy, story and experiences and things that have happened throughout my life and things that I'm blessed with and some weird events and whatever. But at the end of the movie, you find out in the last, 7-8 minutes of the movie that none of it really happened the way that I saw it. Because I think we perceive our own experiences through ourselves, obviously. If I say to you, you're wearing a pink shirt, I know what pink looks like to me. I know what the pink is in my head. But everybody else might perceive it differently. Right.
Well, especially, do you know, this is just an aside, the white and gold dress.
Yes.
That was actually blue and black.
Right.
And we saw that for the first time, how differently we can perceive things.
Right.
And people were looking, I mean, we almost got into arguments looking at the same dress.
Right.
And some people actually did see it as blue and black, and other people saw it as white and gold.
Some people ended up blue and black over it.
Yes, yeah, right, yeah. It was so. Anyway, was it more like A Secret Life of Walter Mitty?
Again, here that just came out last year, but if I had that out in '96 when I wanted to, then
that was the
That might be
remake.
different.
The original one came out
Right,
a long
right.
time ago. Anyway.
Well, Chef, now that you've been joining us slowly throughout the evening, we've been talking about lots of things, but I've also been quoting Roger sort of along the way. And I have another quote from Roger that I'd like to ask you. Now, it's a bit of a tricky question.
All
So
right.
if I'm putting anybody on the spot, we can come back to you. We can just kind of do a round table, or you can pass all together and we can do it right at the end. It's up to you, because it's a tricky one. Everyone has arrived at their truth in their own way, in their own lifetime. Sort of like what you were just talking about with this movie. Everyone has their own truth. What is yours?
Wow, that's a good question. Again, I think it's just doing what I've loved doing for so long. I mean, I didn't really take this industry seriously until I was about 26. It was easy and it was fun to cook, and I just liked doing it.
And are you 27 now?
Yeah, it's like I'm 27 and a half. And, it was just the kind of epiphany that I could do something with it and really do something and, not really change. We're not here to change people's lives, but it's really cool for me to talk to people after they've eaten at any of the restaurants I've cooked at and say something like, we had a great 5th anniversary there, or we'll never forget the mushroom dish you made, or the whatever it is. And so, yeah, lobster pie. That's awesome. That's
You have a fan.
lobster preparations, of course. But that's nice. I mean, it left a small imprint on that person's life or their experience, and so that was kind of the, wow, I've arrived. I've done something to impact somebody, and honestly, that was my philosophy anyway with life in general. To me, it's about what you leave behind.
Yes, interesting.
And
So
it's-
you feel that through food you can touch and reach other people. That's beautiful. Sandro, what about you?
Well, I think about 3 years ago, I was battling stage 4 cancer, and I learned a lot about myself during that time, and I put so many years, into my work, and probably too much time into my work, and I think when you have that year that you have to take off and battle this thing here, you really figure out, what's really important, the wonderful things of life, and I have this beautiful wife over here, Claudie, and we have 2 great children. We just had our 2nd grandchild Wednesday. So you really figure out, you really understand. Thank you. So that was my, opening of really, figuring out a lot of things, what I'm here for. It's not just my photography. I know I've had an incredible career, very blessed career, but there's this whole other part of me that I think I'm so blessed with, and that's family. And so, it's good. It's good to be here.
It's good to be here. In a way, it's a lucky time when you can have that kind of year and still be here, but have had that almost where time stops and you get to focus on what your truth might be.
Right.
Chaz, what about for you?
You probably can guess it's love. I just think that love heals, and love can touch people, and that we can, I do think that and I have this theory about sound and vibration too. It's not just, it's something that I think that one day we're going to be able to treat people, put them in these sound rooms, and provide certain tones and vibrations and heal people of mental illness, of some physical illnesses. It's just something that I don't know why I'm so obsessed with it, but I am, and I think that it also is something that you can actually, that through being loved and being safe. That's why I hate reading anything about like children who were abused, because I think that there's so much potential that is lost on people who feel the absence of love in their life. And so anyway, that's my truth, that love heals.
Ole. 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 Spaniard, say ole. Spaniard, say ole. George? I'm taking him home with me. George?
I mean, you know, it's all there. It's, you know, it's about appreciating what you do have. Life is so short, you know, just finding that balance. It's love. It's connecting to that energy, sound. It's making things with love also, which is what Chef does, which is incredible because you feel that. And for me, you know, what drives me every morning, you know, it's always too early. But you know what eventually gets me up after I snooze a few times is this feeling that we are all responsible for our world, you know, and you read the news and it's so depressing and it doesn't always, you know, you can be hopeful, but it doesn't look like hope is sort of on the menu every day, and you have to believe that you have an influence. And actually, of course, this is, you know, change yourself, of course, and change the world. It sounds easy or simple, but do it. Just do it. It can be in your home. It can be your family. It can be on a slightly wider platform. It can be huge. It can be, you know, visual. It can be sound. It can be the food you eat. Just do this with a certain consciousness and awareness that your choices, and nobody's perfect, and I'm not saying you have to suddenly become perfect, but even one good choice once in a while can make a huge difference. The way you look at someone, the way you say, how are you, and you mean it, and you look into someone's eye, and you really want to hear the answer. I'm sure, you know, when you are diagnosed with an illness, you don't always know how to respond to how are you. Hey, how are you? And you're like, well. So all these things, and for me, of course, as a musician, in the end, it comes down to sharing beauty and seeking justice and, you know, believing that in 10,000 years of sort of civilized evolution, you know, we've done something good and that we have the potential to do great things, and with great power comes great responsibility, and I really hope that all of us here take that seriously. So that's what moves me.
I love coming to my own dinner parties because I learn so much, really, and so I'm very grateful for that. I find my personal truth that I just learn again and again is that everyone wants to be heard, and that everyone has that need to be heard and connect. And so I do hope that that's what we do here. I also have a tweet that just came in for Chef. So Allie, what do we have for Chef?
My computer just froze. If you give me 1 second. There it goes.
Sure.
And while computer froze, I want to tell you one thing about being heard, being seen. At the Conference on World Affairs in Boulder, which is like over 40 years old, it was co-founded by Eleanor Roosevelt, Professor Howard Higman, and Buckminster Fuller. And Roger used to go to this Conference on World Affairs, and he said that Bucky Fuller would walk around the campus, and when you said hello, instead of saying, how are you, or whatever, he said, I see you, because everyone had a desire to be seen. I see you.
I love that. I love that. Ooh, well, the person who is tweeting, I see you, and you have won dinner for two at Acadia.
Oh.
So, I'm just saying, you know, it's not the worst to be here. What is their question?
From Carol Montgomery.
Oh, Carol, good for you.
Is there one person you could point to as your inspiration or mentor?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Is there one person that you could point to as your inspiration or mentor?
Wow, that's tough.
You're about to make many enemies.
I know. I choose my words and Chef's wisely. You know, I learned a lot through a lot of different mentors over the years. I think my biggest mentor, is that better? My biggest mentor was Henry Adenia from Trio Restaurant up in Evanston. And he was a dear friend of mine, and really kind of took me under his wing, because I recall being, again, much younger and very impatient, and why not me, and you know, everyone else gets restaurants and investors and all this cool stuff. And he really taught me that you know, there's a time, it's like a natural progression in life where if you just put your head down, do good work, believe in what you do, that everything else will kind of fall into place. And so he taught me a lot about patience, and he taught me a lot about fairness and culture to the restaurant, things that I would use much, much later in life and with my restaurant now. You know, he taught me about, you know, saying things like, well, when you open your restaurant, you really need to cultivate the culture of, with your employees, you know, a culture of fairness, a culture of honesty and transparency and passion and love. And I didn't really maybe realize it at the time, but then as I got older and older and you know, as the restaurant got closer to fruition, I got it. And that's kind of what we've preached since day one, you know. And we don't want to, you know, we don't micromanage, we don't nitpick on you, we just hope that, you know, we hire the right people that have that passion and care as much, and that's what sees us through, and you know, and kind of buys into our vision and our real champions for what we do.
I'm going to say that as a diner, having been to Acadia, I really felt that. I really felt that there was a lot of harmony going on between the people who worked there and the food that was made and the atmosphere.
Right,
so I highly, if you haven't been, obviously you can see how great it is. I highly recommend that everybody visit Acadia. I also think it's time that we check in on Miss Rosemary. Rosemary, how's it going?
It's going.
Yes?
Yes.
Can we see?
Sure.
Okay, so this is what Rosemary's been working on for the last hour and a half. I'm telling you, doesn't she make everyone look better? So we have a treat, I think, for Rosemary and the whole table. And whoever tweeted gets this wonderful original piece of artwork. Thank you, Rosemary. What do we have for Rosemary?
It was also just a card question, and it was what 3 figures would you invite to dinner and why?
Ooh, what figures would you invite to dinner and why?
Let's see. Buckminster Fuller would be good.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Buckminster Fuller is good. I think I would love to have for dinner maybe people that aren't here anymore.
Sure.
Would be interesting. Some great celebrities, some old Hollywood actors and actresses, things like that, I think would be fascinating to get an insight of that. And maybe Albert Einstein.
He would be a wonderful dinner party guest. Well, I'll keep this because I have one more quick question for you. You who draws so many people, and you just go on Facebook, she has really drawn so many people. You probably know most of them because she really has drawn so many Chicagoans. What have you learned about human nature from drawing people?
I think when you were talking about people wanting to be heard, being illustrated is different than being photographed. And as a photographer, you can capture in your work a certain literalism. I can capture an impressionistic section of a person's personality, and I try and draw that out of them, and I do it quickly. So when I'm drawing live, especially, I really try and pull that energy, and I can't start it over. So it is what it is. So I really try and get that emotion, and people, I think, like that. It's like old school because we all have cameras on our phones and everything else. But an illustration that's just like you're an original, and you'll always look great on paper.
This is why everybody always looks so great in all of her drawings. Well, I know that we are getting tight on time, so I just have a couple quick questions for the round table, and I'm going to include Rosemary in this, of course, because I think you're done, maybe close to being done, so I'll include Rosemary as well. Chef, what is one dish that everybody should know how to make?
Cook pasta correctly.
Which a lot of people mess up.
Yeah, it seems like that would be a very, very easy thing, and I've seen it butchered 100 different ways. In fact, my sister calls me and says, when do I put the salt in, or the oil? I mean, it's just... Well, salted water up to a boil. You don't want to lose the boil, so you put the pasta in, make sure it's still moving. Then when it's al dente, take it out, strain it, and then if you're not going to eat it right away, then it would be tossed in like a little olive oil or something. But usually that would go right into the dish.
So usually at this point I ask, what is your favorite junk food? But then the question ultimately gets to me and I have to say frosting again. So I'm not going to tell people how much I love frosting. This time I'm going to ask everybody, what is your healthy snack? I'll start with you, Sandro, just quickly around the table. Your go-to, because you're all so busy, on the run, your go-to healthy snack that you pack with you and you just take with you all the time.
I'd say probably nuts.
Nuts, okay,
Yeah,
I love nuts.
Yeah, nuts are
Chaz?
good.
Bananas and unsalted pistachio nuts.
Does that even exist, unsalted?
Yeah.
Oh, I like salted, but okay, I'll go with you on bananas. Chef?
Though most people that know me would probably say easy cheese. You did say healthy, right? So that would be trail mix.
Trail mix. It's funny, it's always the chefs who come up with the, I like Cheese Whiz or whatever. George, your healthy go-to snack?
Raw nuts. Definitely raw nuts. And bananas before performances.
So this is interesting. Did I tell you that they all have commonalities? They all like nuts and bananas. Rosemary, what's your healthy snack?
You like bananas?
I love bananas. Yeah, I love bananas.
An apple. Okay, so Rosemary's healthy snack is an apple. I would also say nuts. So that tells you something about this table.
And I read recently that women who eat nuts are thinner than women who don't. So
well, I'm waiting for that to happen for me. It hasn't exactly gone that way quite yet.
I think somebody forgot to tell that to my body.
Yeah, right. Yes. Chaz and I are in line. I want to thank everyone for coming because your energy, just like George was saying, your energy gives us so much inspiration here. I want to thank the folks at City Winery because they really know what they're doing. Take a moment to look at your screens. It takes an enormous amount of people to put this show on. So I want to thank my team and crew. I, of course, want to thank Sandro Miller for all that he's done tonight and his work. Chaz Ebert for spreading love. Chef Ryan McCaskey for feeding us so well. George LePauw for being a constant inspiration. The Spaniards! I'd like to thank the Spaniards for their energy. Rosemary Fancy for being here the whole time working so hard. Okay, so our next dinner party is June 1st, and this is what we're doing. We're going to collaborate with Columbia College, and the whole dinner party we're going to talk about the themes that happened in the cult movie Sideways. So we're going to be talking about love, and relationship therapist and dating guru Bella Gandhi's going to be here. We're going to talk about wine and the sommelier from Akanto, The Gauge, and the director of Slam, who was also the sommelier consultant on the film Sideways. He's going to be here, John McDaniel. And then to talk about movies, we're going to have a little-known actor called Joe Mantegna. Maybe you've heard of him right here on the dinner party, June 1st. It's going to be a fundraiser for SimFest because we love SimFest, which is happening April 16th through the 19th, which is the Chicago International Movie and Music Festival. And
also mentioned Ebert Fest.
And Ebert Fest.
Which is happening April 15th through 19th in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois.
Absolutely right. Ebert Fest, 16th through 19th in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. And then the chef on June 1st is Chef Goronsky from Akanto. So I hope that you can come June 1st. Tickets go on sale this Thursday. Until then, thanks for coming, everybody.